Ladies and gentlemen, good evening. Our guest tonight is His Holiness Bhakti Tirtha Swami from the United States, from the International Society for Krishna Consciousness in the United States. Your Holiness, you are in Mauritius this time for a specific mission. Could you tell us briefly what is the main purpose of your visit?
I'm completing a 35-country world tour, and this tour has particularly involved first visiting the Hare Krishna temples, and then having a chance to meet with the medical community to address health, particularly from a holistic perspective. I've had several encounters with the business communities where I've had chance to give workshops and seminars on principle-centered leadership, conflict resolution, stress management, time management, and most important, to interact with the interfaith communities. Now, my special mission here in Mauritius is that I've been invited by our devotee, Hare Krishna congregation, and also from members of Nateres, to have a chance to address issues dealing with social degradation. And so this focuses on drug abuse, on crime, violence, prostitution. So we've had interesting encounters with some of the ministers, with some the chief magistrates, and wonderful opportunities to do like this, to address the media through radio, through television, and also through newsprint.
Swamiji, you've been here in Mauritius for a couple of days now. What has been your assessment of the drug situation in Mauritius, rather?
Well, it's somewhat becoming a phenomenon all around the world. If we look close, we'll see that the illicit and pharmaceutical drug business is the #1 business in the world. There's no enterprise that makes more money. Second largest business is defense. So we are becoming a global community that while we are narcoticizing ourselves, we are perfecting our ability of how to defend and kill each other. So this is quite sad. In Mauritius, about 50% of all the prisoners in jail are in jail due to drug-related crimes. Now in Mauritius, about 40% of the youth from age 12 to 24 are smoking, and about 25 to about 24% or so are chronic drinkers of alcohol. So even though we have a small country, somehow we're beginning to imbibe so many of the unhealthy patterns of much of the world, especially the Western world. See, America, for instance, its #1 export is entertainment. And so much of that entertainment is about illicit activities. So many of the heroes are heroes who do not possess morality, integrity, and ethics. So one of the significant reasons that I'm here was to meet with many of the leaders in the educational sector, commercial sector, political sector, and say it's time for a serious wake-up call that an interesting plague is taking place all around the world, and it has to do with so much involvement in selfish addiction or selfishness. If we look at the issues, we'll see that there's rise now in all types of abuses: child abuse, elderly abuse, spouse abuse, resource abuse, we go on and on. We see there's now threat of nuclear war, chemical, biological warfare. The diseases are on the rise. Religious fanaticism on the rise. What is one of the core reasons for such is that people are putting too much emphasis on the physicality, on the externals, and not enough on the internal. People are too captured by lust and minimizing love. More and more we are citizens of the global community, where we're trying to experience pleasure rather than happiness. Pleasure has to do with material experiences. Happiness has to deal with relationships. And so enduring happiness means people are cooperating, working together, bonding together, and being able to touch each other's psyche in a deeper level. But in the kind of take society that we now have, people are more into wanting to feel good rather than to know the good, to love the good, and to do the good. So we have offered to many of the important leaders in the country a character is power package. And this package was to remind them that what we reinforce, what we reward, we will get more of. See, as long as people have no reason not to take drugs, they will take drugs. As long as people are rewarded for crime and prostitution, as long as there are sufficient benefits, we can talk all day, can have all kinds of laws and resolutions, but we will get more of what we reward. So I put together a package for the media, the business community, educational community especially, and for the political community, to emphasize a national program on character development. And this program was to entail a massive conscious shift where people are looking for good role models, where good role models are rewarded, where children in school are writing papers on ethics, where in the various departments, police departments, the military, that there is singling out of people who are doing things wonderful in the nation's service, where perhaps even the president's cabinet will once a year honor someone that we can even put in a museum, a hall of fame, so that there can be a legacy of people who have gone the extra mile and have shown that they really care about each other and their life is their message. So this involved media in terms of public service announcements, such things as bulletin boards, bunko stickers. In other words, the idea was creating a massive sort of conscious wave instead of rewarding the negative or having students and adults to tune in to immorality, to emphasize morality and ethics.
So you're sort of capitalizing more on the positive aspect of life here. And how exactly, Swamiji, do you plan to, strike the balance in a country which is multi-ethnic, multilingual, multi-religious? Does that make a difference?
See, that's one of the beauties. Mauritius is a very beautiful country because of the massive, massive diversity. But it's also in a very dangerous position. Dangerous on two major accounts. First, when there is diversity and there's not a nucleus to consolidate that diversity, it brings chaos and can have tremendous repercussions. Also, Mauritius is at a point, at a crossroads, because it's trying to now look closer at its financial economic sector, moving from textiles, from, I think, sugarcane to textiles, and now looking more at the information age, communication. Mauritius is at a sensitive point because with the globalizations of markets, the centralization of technology and information, now whatever happens in any part of the world, we all somehow become affected by it. So with so much degradation happening, and people beginning to value and look toward that as the standard, a country that is so diversified is in a very dangerous position. So some of my message to some of the leaders was, let's engage in prevention. Let us not do what has happened in so many countries where the problem becomes so protracted that it then becomes very difficult to deal with it. We've already have signals in the last decade that religious connections are not as strong as we would like them to be. Ethnicity is not as strong. And that means there are underlying currents that certain things can ignite and make it explosive. So as I travel throughout the global arena, we're seeing many patterns. And we realize that as spiritualists, that we are foremost should have the duty to help to create a better and peaceful world order. As spiritualists, we should not just be Friday to Friday, Saturday to Saturday, Sunday to Sunday worshipers. We should not just be concerned about our own religion or our own ethnic group or our own race. We should be concerned and the circumstance. It's not that God made a mistake by creating all of the different religions and different races. That is part of His magnanimity and part of the beauty, that God has such wonderful creativity and He has created such diversity so that there can be harmony. It is humankind's error that we do not celebrate that diversity. We cannot get synergy. The greatest productivity, the greatest creativity happens when diversity is connected with unity. But the greatest chaos is when diversity is not connected with conformity and uniformity.
Swamiji, as we can see, you have written lots of books, and one of your latest publication, I believe, is Leadership in the Age of Higher Consciousness. And what are you, in fact, proposing to the world?
I have written about 9 books, and they're being translated into 10 different languages. And one of my specialties is leadership for higher consciousness. Because in my work, I'm acting as a consultant to celebrities, to diplomats, and I've been asked to consult for several presidents. So some years back, I was working mostly in Africa and somewhat in Switzerland and France and a few places. But some of the heads of states personally asked if I would act as a consultant. So I wanted to put a book together that particularly a president or a governor or a mayor or a politician or a minister, and even just a family head could be able to use this book in such a way that they could increase and improve on their own character while being able to have action plans and policies that would help to create a more sweeter, productive family, that would create a more stronger and productive institution and a stronger country. So I've written this book in such a way that it includes ancient wisdom, universal spiritual principles to address modern day problems. See, sometimes we're approaching things just secularly, or we're approaching them only from a spiritual perspective. The problems of the world today are so great, they cannot be approached by myopic considerations. It needs the best of both. And so a lot of my mission is trying to help people to solve material problems with universal spiritual solutions.
And Swamiji, what has been the response?
I think the response has been awesome. If you look at my books, you'll see my reviews are from United Nations people, it's from educators and politicians. It crosses quite an amazing sector. Some of my books are being used in universities as textbooks or as subtext books. I've personally given my leadership book to about 12 presidents of different countries. The most recent president who's studying the leadership book is the Prime Minister of England and the President of Mexico. So the books are reaching the masses because they're written in such terminology that the average person can be able to benefit. At the same time, they are profound and relevant, that they are being appreciated by various ethnic groups, religious institutions, and also people of different levels of persuasion. But I think what's wonderful is just the nature of our Hare Krishna institution. Our Hare Krishna institution is not really just a religion. It's not just for a particular ethnic group. If you travel around the world, you will find there are Krishna devotees from all different backgrounds and involved in all levels of the society. For instance, sometimes I do national TV programs. People may wonder, what does a spiritualist have to do with education and politics and crime and commerce? But we are all spiritual beings who are undergoing material experiences. So our essence is spiritual. So therefore, it is natural that a spiritual person. The question is, why isn't it that more spiritual leaders are engaged in trying to help raise consciousness? See, one of the greatest threats to humanity is religious fanaticism. Because religion is so strong and is so animating when it is really based on love and the real teachings of the original prophets. But because it is so powerful, when it is abused and misused, it becomes the greatest devastating force. And this is what we're being faced with today.
As we've seen it recently. Well, Swamiji, as we are talking about books and you've written on modern management and leadership for an age of higher consciousness. How about life, quality of life and lifestyle itself? Stress and modern life. We're living in a digital world. How do you view life?
Well, it's very significant. For instance, some of the medical doctors are recognizing that 80% of every disease is connected with stress. Stress produces disease, stress amplifies disease, and stress weakens the immune system. Now, believe it or not, so important is love. When we do not feel loved, we are 10 times more susceptible to chronic disease, 6 times more susceptible to any type of disease, and 5 times more susceptible to premature death. When someone does not feel loved, does not feel cared for, does not feel valued, it's like the mind, the hypothalamus, through neurotransmitters, that is through the systems through the body, the mind sends messages. And so when the mind is disturbed, it's like attacking various organs. So much of sickness that we're beginning to experience has to do with what is going on in people's minds. People's minds are becoming more and more disorientated, more and more affixed toward the physicality, and less internal nourishment. So when we are talking again about spiritual phenomena, it touches upon every level, upon health and upon commerce. In commerce and business, now the competition is so intense. People have to, institutions, corporations have to make things better and faster and cheaper. But how do they do that? They cannot do it unless they can create greater teamship, unless they can empower their employers. How do they do that? They have to care more and deal more with relationship and consciousness. You know, everything comes to consciousness. A certain kind of conscious individual is a criminal. A certain type of conscious entity is a wife batterer. A certain type of conscious person is a manipulator, an embezzler. So when we address consciousness, we change the person. We must be careful about what we think, because what we think turns into what we speak. We must be careful about what we speak, because what we speak turns into how we act. As we watch how we act, it produces habits. We must be careful about our habits, because it becomes our character. And then our character becomes our culture. And what we're gradually getting is a low trust culture, and a take culture, and a culture where we are minimizing the sweet human quality that is common to all of us.
Your Holiness, then what is your message to the world?
Our message is at this critical time in world history, we should remind ourselves, and this is a particular message to the Mauritian populace as well, that ultimately we are honoring the one God, and through many different religions, practices, and that one God is concerned about the quality of our devotion. Also, we are one race, although we are manifested in many varieties. That is the human race. 3, although we have many languages, there's one ultimate language, the language of the heart. And as we focus more on these common things, we can make deeper heart connections where we can all live and enjoy life on a higher level. But we cannot do that without a genuine spiritual reference. Otherwise, we will deal with just relativity, and one person's truth, one person's honor, code of conduct is totally different, and then you have anarchy. So we can be a human family when we're able to sort of regain the natural and inherent divinity that is being covered over now by drugs, by alcohol, by commodities. We don't want to be people who have put a priority on commodities where we have minimized community. It is through community that we can feel our greatest sense of being. And it is through fragmentation that is coming from a lot of the Western materialistic framework that's causing people to try to be more individuals. And then what happens? The World Health Organization put out a report a few years ago that looking at the global community, that in a few years, maybe 10 to 12 years, one of the greatest issues facing the world is going to be mental illness. It will be a greater problem than cancer and heart disease. And the main reason is because of depression. And depression is there because people are still addressing too much the external, and they even sometimes having more, but feeling less. We are people who often know the price of everything and the value of very little. We don't want to be people who just want to be honored, or we want to be honorable. We don't want to be entities who have a failure and see ourselves as a failure. We want to learn from failure, recognize we made mistakes, but that we are not failures, and we use the mistake for growth.
Your Holiness, any special message for Mauritians?
Mauritians have a chance to be one of the #1 countries in the world, or to be a country that will fragment like we've seen with many third world countries due to the small infrastructure. It's at a crossroads now. And we pray and we have confidence that there are leaders here who will come to the call of duty by looking at what things have affected much of the world in a negative sense, and not embrace that and take those things that are healthy. And one way that's can happen if the religious leaders connect more. This is what is lacking in Mauritius right now. Religions are going on, ethnic groups are going on, but there's, for instance, no solid interfaith council. There should be a solid interfaith council where religious leaders are proactive. They're already making so many arrangements and plans to guarantee an ongoing, smooth running society, so that it arrests the kind of wave that's gradually beginning to sweep. And then we pray that the leaders themselves will realize that their examples will make a big impact on what the future is, because our actions speak much louder than our words. So leaders should be more motherly or fatherly, and that just as a father has many different children, loves them all, and tries to constantly see what is the greatest good for the greatest amount of experiencing the development for the family. Leaders should think, what is the greatest good that will help the greatest number of people? And if they maintain this focus, we guarantee you, Mauritius at this time will be able to set an example for many parts of the world. Otherwise, it will be in the escalating syndrome that is happening on the global scene.
Your Holiness, thank you very much for your time, and we wish you a very safe and happy trip back.
We were most happy to be here. We have special love for such a diversified country, and we pray that the country will prosper like anything in the future. Hare Krishna.